All right, next step in this lengthy process is to apply a good separator to the entire skull and the clay base. One of the best I have found is a product called, let's see if I get this in camera here, MR15, which is available from Silicone's Inc. All right, this is basically, smells like something I made when I was younger, when I was first starting out in taxidermy. This smells like white paraffin wax and mineral spirits mixed together. At any rate, we paint this over the entire skull. I'm using a watercolor brush. This is a real cheap brush. Every now and then the little hairs come off onto the subject I'm wiping down. When that happens, pick them off. Like I said, none of this is rocket science. This is just, it's just real meticulous work, you know, and the more careful you are, the better your results are going to be. One of the places you want to make sure you get thoroughly covered are the inside of the eye sockets and the tops of the inside of the eye sockets, okay? As well as the clay bottom, the bones of the zygomatic arch. What's nice about this will soak in a bit to the applied water-based clay and really help you further seal things. Like so. And we go all the way around with this. All the way around. Put on a good slathering, a good liberal coating. It's easy for me. I take a liberal slant on a lot of things anyway. But on this, it's pretty important. Okay. Go around the back side again. Now, you want to be sure you apply this real heavily to the wood buttons that you have at the corners. Real heavily. You want these really well coated. And bear in mind they're wood, so they're going to absorb the liquid portion of this product, okay? They're going to absorb the liquid matrix that this is mixed with. So give a good heavy slathering to this. Make sure you get it into all of the channels and all the little key locks. Make sure you thoroughly cover the clay. Your corners. Go over the buttons a couple of times to be sure that they have a good... Now, this one here, I notice at the back is tilting a little bit. So I'm just simply going to, with my finger, kind of reset it so that it's more in a level up and down position. You don't want it leaning back any. There. You want to make sure all of these are fairly level, straight up and down. Go over the skull again one more time with the release agent. This works better than any spray you can use. Be sure you get under any of the undercuts, like back here at the back, at the rear edge of the skull. And we've got a nice, shiny head bone. All right, well covered. All around, well covered. Go again to the underside of the eye sockets. Both left and right. You might see some clay up in these eye sockets. There's a reason for that. There were cracks in this skull, which skulls become damaged during the boiling process, and the quickest way to clean a skull, to ship it out or what have you, is to boil it. The best way is, I've heard some say, the best way is to let it macerate, which is basically letting it rot in water and then picking off all the smelly tissue and scraping it clean and bleaching it and whatnot. Others like to use domestic beetles to remove the flesh from the skulls. I prefer boiling. I don't care if it's going in my collection or otherwise. I boil a skull. All right, we're done with this. The next step, we're going to let this dry a bit, and after that, the wooden walls are going to be secured in place with hot glue. All right, I've gone ahead and secured the first two walls with hot glue. It's a real simple process. Take your old reliable hot glue gun, run a bead along the wall, let it cool a couple of seconds, run another bead and a possible third bead of hot glue. Now we're going to turn this puppy around. And as the glue is setting up, I press the clay against the wooden wall, we're using my hand on one side and a wall on the opposite side, and I press that clay nice and tight. Okay? One thing you want to be certain to never ever do not touch the hot glue while it's hot. It burns. I've got old scars from that to prove it. It really does. It hurts. Okay. Now for this side here, I'm going to apply hot glue to the outside, and I'm going to press the clay, press tight against the clay to make sure there's a nice tight bond. Now, yeah, there is a gap here in the corner. All right, there's some light showing through, but we don't worry about that right now. That will be filled in with clay when we seal the interior of the box. But for now, we go ahead and apply a bead of hot glue all along the base, a second one just above it, let it roll down on top of it. Be sure it's well sealed. Now what the clay does, or what the hot glue does, it does make this wooden wall kind of float a little bit. So you want to get it nice and snug, and don't touch the clay, hot glue like I just did. Yikes. Okay, that's a little painful. But it peels right off. Don't let it fall in on the mold. Oh, God. But if there's a way to screw things up, I can find it. Now, hold this tight against the clay and hold it in place until just a few seconds, until the glue begins to set, okay? So when you take your hand away, it doesn't move. And you can tell it goes from a clear appearance to a cloudy appearance as it's beginning to set up. All right, now, the next thing I want to do is I want to run a bead of hot glue up the side where the two pieces of wood join, and then down again. Repeat this as often as you needed to create a good tight bond. There we go. Okay. Blow on it a little bit. Now, the last piece of wood is this rear wall, and what I did off camera, I coated it with the wax release agent so the silicone will release easily. It will not stick. Now I'm going to go down like so, lift forward, and press against the clay real tight. I want a super tight bond, as tight as I can get with just finger pressure against this wall, the base the wall of the base of the clay. Ta-dum. Now you saw how that moved a little bit. All right. Take the hot glue gun, heavy in the corner, heavy in the opposite corner, and the smear goes across. I put the bead of hot glue running up the side, on each side, the upright corner, I should say, of each side of this rear wall. Let it cool. I then put a rubber band around the entire thing to hold it. I now have in my hand real warm clay from under the warming lamp, and I'm going to go ahead and proceed to seal this box in on the inside. Now you recall this little gap that's over here, how there's actually light shining through. What I'm doing now is I'm rolling out a little piece of clay, and I'm going to apply it to seal that from the inside. See how the light shines through right there? Okay, if the light can shine through, the silicone can leak through, and you don't want that. So, a handy dandy modeling tool, just kind of press the clay into contact with that, put it down here in the corner, and press the clay into the wooden corner. Oh, I wish my hands wouldn't be in the way. But this needs to be done no matter whether you're using foam core or strips of thin plywood like this. Of course, even though I cut them on a table saw, the cuts are not flush. They're not exactly straight for whatever reason. You're cutting them quickly, and you just want to get the heck out of there and get back in the shop. So I go back to the work table, I should say. All right, one more little one here above. Silicone is only going to come to just so far above the top of the skull and not much more. But I do like to seal the box all the way to the top if I can. Now, once this is in place, I take the spear tip of the modeling tool, dip it in a little alcohol, and then run the spear tip into the corner. All right, and I really press that clay into good tight contact. I then take a wooden tool with a flat edge, and I scrape the clay off the wood. I want a nice clean appearance to the silicone mold box, or the silicone mold. And the way you do that is you get a nice appearance on the inside of the mold box. Okay, like so. Get a brush, the alcohol on it, and brush up along the clay. All right. Well, that's a wide corner that will now produce no leaks. The same exact procedure is done all the way around the perimeter of the box where the clay meets the wood. Okay, roll out a long, thin worm or snake, whatever you feel like calling it, of clay. All right. I'll roll it out on the table here, on the workboard. Yep, there we go. Now we lay this in here like so. And mesh it into place. Okay. And just like with the upright corner, this seam along the bottom gets handled in exactly the same way. Okay. Dip the modeling tool in the alcohol. This is the best thing to do, so that the modeling tool slides across the clay without creating a great disturbance in the force. And you press down ever so gently just to get that into the slight gap that's formed there. Now remember, you've got your channels here, so you want to keep your channels nice and clean and crisp, or as clean and crisp as possible. Blend the clay that you're using to seal with the base of your clay platform. And this is continued all the way around the skull, all the way around the interior of the box, I should say. All four corners must be sealed with clay on the inside. All walls along the edges must be filled with a little snake or a little worm of clay. Even if it looks like, oh gosh, how can anything leak through there? Believe me, I'm speaking from experience. Silicone will find a way. It's like the line from Jurassic Park. Life will find a way. The silicone will find a way. And we lightly blend that to the clay just in front of the channel. And here we go. I'm going to do this one corner here on camera, and then the rest I will do off camera, just for the sake of time. We'll pat that down, make sure it fills. We'll dip in the alcohol so it stops sticking to a modeling tool. There we go. Try a brush. You get in there any way you think you need to. Hold, well, okay, we'll hold this down, hold the locking key down. The little wooden button is lifting a bit. We hold that down. Okay, it came out. That's all right. You knew it was going to happen eventually. It usually does. There's a little hair there. We'll get that little hair from the brush out. Now I'll replace this wooden button in its little seat. And I will press it down real good with the metal modeling tool, because the wax covered wood will tend to stick to your finger more than it will stick to the metal. And around the base where it contacts the clay, because it's been moved out a couple of times already, just make sure the clay is tight around there. Now, I'll give a close-up, and I'm going to go ahead and complete the rest of this off camera. Here we go. That right there is a real good seal. Right in the corner. That's a good seal. And we have a good seal on the upright corner as well. You can see that. Okay. This takes a few more minutes, so I'm going to do it off camera, and you won't have to worry about sitting there watching me do this boring work. When I come back, we'll be pouring the silicone into the mold. Yes! All right, now let's give a quick overview of our mold box and what we've got right before we cover it with silicone. Yeah, kids, we're getting to that point. is a nice mold box. I'm going to do one last thing before the pouring of the silicone. And that is to spray it, even though it was coated with a wax-based release agent, was painted all around it. I'm going to give it one last shot. This is the release agent I use. Again, this is another Polytek product, and it is available from B.I.T.Y or Brick in the Yard. Right there's their information. Going to give a little shake to the can and a real quick spray. There we go. The silicone that I'm going to use for this project is a fairly new product from Polytek, sold through Brick in the Yard Supply. This is the PlatSil 7320. It's a part A and B platinum cure silicone. It has approximately a 5-minute working time and is able to be demolded in about 1 hour at 77 degrees. It is a very low viscosity, so it does not require gassing. And the fact that it has a 5-minute pot life, working time, you're not going to have a lot of time to put this through a vacuum chamber.